We are thrilled to connect with our guest, Mahan Tavakoli, who will be joining us in Mauritius in May of this year to lead a high-level C-suite dynamic. He's a global executive advisor who works directly with globally established CEOs, governance and leadership teams on strategy execution, leadership alignment, and organizational transformation. Mahan is also the host of the Partnering Leadership podcast, where he engages with many of the world's leading and prominent strategy thinkers. Mahan, you're joining us in Mauritius in May of this year to lead a C-suite dialogue. Before we sit down with our senior leaders in Mauritius, we wanted to explore the thinking behind this conversation. In an era where geopolitical shifts, corporate tension, and technological disruption can quickly reshape strategy, why, according to you, is leadership judgment more critical than ever?
Akilesh, what a wonderful opportunity it will be for me to visit Mauritius, in part because of the tremendous insights you have shared, and Vimi as well, with respect to the C-suite and the opportunities and the challenges ahead. So it's going to be an absolute joy for me to be there. Now, part of what I have seen is that there are lots of different challenges leaders are facing right now. As a result of what you mentioned, there are geopolitical tensions, supply chain fragility, there is uncertainty, and then there is AI and technological transformation that is impacting people as well. So there is a strategic anxiety trap where it's not just about AI, it is cognitive loading that a lot of executives are facing, and that puts a lot of strain on them. The top executives, they are focused primarily now on judgment over prediction. In a stable world, you're paid to predict. We live in a very unstable world where we are going to be paid for judgment. And finally, strategy fails without empathy and trust to move the team through friction.
Wow. Man, this is the toughest job these days, at that strategic level. And as I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm just wondering, it's a challenging journey to be at that strategic level in the organization. Now, with the geopolitical challenges, the supply chain that is now broken, plus the AI, plus the strategy, plus the value and the legacy, what are you seeing at that high stakes strategic level? What are those questions that you're seeing, CEOs, I would say struggling with, but maybe having to navigate through?
With respect to strategy, there is an element of value migration as a result of the transformation we're facing, where the question is no longer exactly how do we grow, it's where is value shifting? Because as the cost of prediction drops, the value of human trust skyrockets. And that is going to significantly impact how organizations operate internally and how they capture value externally. There's also an element of administrative cholesterol, I call it, where all organizations have built up. There's cholesterol that builds up in our arteries, slowing down the flow of blood, potentially impacting health. But there is administrative cholesterol that many executives realize their organizations have that slow down change in the organization at a time where, in part as a result of AI, they need to be more nimble and transform faster. And finally, there is an element of legacy as resilience. Now, legacy is not your past success, It is the resilience of the organization you leave behind for the next generation. And many executives are feeling that need to make sure they leave the right legacy for that next generation.
You touched on something extremely important: legacy. Legacy amongst the leadership. And one of the themes of our C-suite dialogue that we will be holding in May of this year is strategic direction and legacy. As AI reshapes part of the value chain, what, according to you, would be the high-stakes strategic questions that you find the leadership team to struggle with, mostly when trying to identify where value is? Because in a world of evolving uncertainty, and as some may say, what is certain is the uncertainty that is going to happen, let's say, on every 2 to 3 year cycle. So how do we navigate with the new imperatives of AI, for example, not to say technology in the larger sense, in that strategic direction and from a legacy lens for our leaders of tomorrow?
Absolutely, Akilesh. And there's a lot of brilliance just in that question, in what you mentioned. The only certainty moving forward is the uncertainty that we all will continually face. Therefore, we need to set up our leadership teams and organizations to be able to be more nimble and adjust more quickly to that uncertainty. Now, to your point, there's a lot of noise around AI. Some of it is appropriate, some of it has gotten people focused on the wrong elements of AI. It has gotten many organizations and many executive teams looking at how do we do things faster, process more quickly as a result of AI. Now, there are productivity gains that AI can produce for organizations. But the analogy or the example I use, Akilesh, is there were these Blockbuster stores where they rented videos. A lot of organizations, what they are doing right now with AI, they are reflecting on how can we, for example, move the process of the line faster in the store with AI as people are renting videos? Or how can we catalog the videos more effectively? AI can do that. Rather than taking a step back and thinking strategically, how has value changed as a result of AI? In Blockbuster's case, value changed with respect to people being able to sit at home and stream and watch videos. Totally different kind of value that Blockbuster was not effectively set up for. So part of it is, your question said it, the only certainty is uncertainty. And secondarily, focusing, in addition to productivity gains, process changes, in what ways will value shift for our organization? Couple of other things to keep in mind is a lot of organizations are in what I call pilot purgatory. They are stuck in small tests at the edges rather than looking at how AI could change the business model. And then the other thing that I see many clients struggling with now that AI has also been thrown in the mix is the power of no. Strategy is a discipline to ignore 90% of the shiny objects to focus on the 10% to increase organizational velocity. And the challenge I see many leadership teams have is, what is the 10% we need to focus in on?
My gosh, that's very powerful. Now, technologies often seems to get the headlines, and you mentioned process earlier, but there's another P in the business, which is the people. And when we talk of AI technology, there's an adoption from the human side of the business that is critical. So, how are you seeing leaders handling that part of AI so that they do remain on to focus on the 10%, but at the same time leveraging on that human advantage that they have?
It's interesting, Vimi, because in organizations that I wasn't working with, that was sometimes a harder case for me to make with respect to bringing people along being a hard thing to do. Because a lot of executives, a lot of CEOs knew the initiatives in the organization, knew how advanced they were, and felt comfortable, felt good. People are using it. We are moving really fast. However, that hasn't been the case. And the example now I love using is less than a month ago, one of the top global firms in implementation of AI, Accenture, had to mandate its own senior partners to start using AI and is now going to use that as a part of the performance review, which tells us what? Here is an organization that has thrived globally on helping other organizations think about AI, implement AI. Actually, Paul Daugherty, who is the CTO of Accenture, and I have had on the Partnering Leadership podcast, had written an outstanding book called Human and Machine. He actually started me on the process of AI about 7 years ago, and then more recently, Radically Human. So Paul Daugherty and Accenture have been at the leading edge of AI, but even they struggle bringing their people along, including their senior executives. So for anyone that assumes that people are going to come along, there needs to be the recognition that that is probably the hardest part of any transformation, including this one. Now, what does it take? There has to be a level of trust with this technology that moves exponentially. Humans move at the speed of trust. So there is a gap. You've got friction that slows things down. There are incentives mismatches in organizations. You can't ask for 21st century agility if your people are still using 20th century KPIs and rigid hierarchy. And there's an element of hard work. You don't install change, you lead it. If people feel threatened, they will quietly protect the status quo. And I see that in organizations, therefore, requiring a strategic focus on how do we bring our people along, not just how do we invest in the most advanced technology.
Yeah. Again, extremely challenging in terms of the mindset that is required. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot going on. So, how do C suite maintain clarity in that flux? Because, like you're saying, they need to role model it.
They do, and I have to now speak to the people who are listening to this or might be watching it. Good for them because they're listening to this and they are watching this. That by itself is a statement of the growth mindset that it will take. In that, in an environment which is uncertain and changing at a faster pace than ever, we need to learn and change at a faster pace than the external environment. Therefore, as leaders, we must upgrade our mental models and therefore filter out the noise. And that is something that is important for us to focus on. Those who are taking the time to listen to this have already taken that first step. There is also a level of anti-fragility. I love Nassim Nicholas Taleb wrote the concept of anti-fragility. Some systems are fragile. Think about a glass container, falls, it breaks. Some systems are robust. You think about a metal container, it falls down, it's robust, nothing happens to it. Some systems are anti-fragile. they become stronger when stressed. Think about the human immune system. Think about muscles. It thrives on a level of stress. So, developing an anti fragility where rather than looking for answers, managing probabilities. And finally, collaborative intelligence, aimed at clarity is now a team sport. It shouldn't reside on any individual or even any small group's shoulders. It requires a C suite willing to challenge each other's assumptions and then bring more clarity to their own thinking and to the organization. These are all disciplines that we can consistently work on that will reduce some of the tension and anxiety and help us thrive as we go through this transformation.
Fantastic, Mahan. I mean, you spoke about clarity, clarity in judgment and decision making. And when you couple that with all the, let's say, accelerated technological development, AI being one of them, and the need and imperative to marry the technological advancement to leadership decision making with the people accompanying that process, I think there is a big question that is being asked by C-suite leaders. What is the value of dialogue in the whole ecosystem within that change framework?
There's a level of insights with respect to where the future is headed for the leaders to gain clarity from. However, it's in struggling with those ideas along with other senior leaders that view the world differently, view the ecosystem differently, that brings a lot of insights and value. I'll give you one quick example on this. One of the organizations, it's a fast food chain that has done brilliantly well here in the US and has expanded internationally, is Chick-fil-A. Just to get a sense of Chick-fil-A's revenues, the average Chick-fil-A unit does more in sales in 6 days. They are disciplined in wanting to take Sundays off, so they are closed on Sundays. The average Chick-fil-A unit does more in 6 days than the average McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway unit put together. So you say, what contributes to that? There's a lot that goes into it, including the fact that Chick-fil-A looked at learning from other organizations outside of the industry and robust dialogue with people outside of the industry, learning from BMW, learning from Amazon, learning from people that you would be like, why would Chick-fil-A, which is a fast food chain, want to learn from them? So, peer conversations are essential. One, because they help us understand our thinking better, but two, because peers from different industries, different experiences, different sectors have drastically different views. They are not shackled with some of the biases we already are shackled with. Because when we are in an industry, when we are in a sector, we know what works and we know what doesn't work. But we don't always look at things with fresh perspectives. So, yes, it's important to share insightful, cutting edge content with a group, but then it's important for the group to wrestle with it from deep expertise in different sectors, different backgrounds. That makes it a lot more powerful.
Couldn't agree more with you on that one, Mahan. So, as we look ahead on this dialogue that we will be having in May 18th, 19th of May, when you will be here in Mauritius, what are questions that you believe leadership teams should be asking themselves about AI strategy and the future of their organizations?
This is a great question for a whole host of reasons, Vimi, because the power of questions in a world where intelligence will be freely available and the cost of intelligence will drop to zero. The most insightful leaders will ask the best questions. So I love that question. And some of the questions that I challenge the executives and organizations I work with to ask themselves is, how do we distinguish between an AI investment that builds a moat around the business or an expensive experiment that just keeps us busy while the world moves on? Another one is, there is a middle management bottleneck in most organizations. So if your leadership team is aligned, but your middle management is still running on legacy habits, how do you fix that friction before it slows your strategy down? And then one final question to think about. There is always a tech talent tension, and I do believe that will increase as a result of AI. How do we lead with enough heart to keep our best talent engaged while still having the head to make the hard calls about where machines genuinely do a better job? And that will continually be a challenge for us as we transform organizations into a world where there are certain tasks that the machines will do a better job with. However, there will also be many opportunities for roles where humans and human judgment can have significant impact. So asking those questions about our organizations can help guide our strategy moving forward.
Indeed, Mahan, and I really believe that this is exactly the kind of deep conversation that we are looking forward to explore together once you are in Mauritius, share your thoughts, experience with the leadership team of different organizations in the Republic of Mauritius. And this is the kind of curated dialogue for people in senior leadership positions. Really look forward to creating that impact together when we are in Mauritius.
Absolutely looking forward to it, because I have no doubt, based on the interactions I've had with various executives, and most especially Akilesh and Vimi, with the two of you, that we are going to share insights that will challenge the executives' thinking. There has to be value and challenge in that. And with the people that we have in the conversation, we will come out energized, refreshed, with new thoughts and new capabilities that can help the executives deal with that uncertainty, Akilesh, that you were talking about. And I can't wait for the conversation.